Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm Papa Boris, and in this video, I'm extremely excited to begin playing DarkQuest 2. If you're not familiar with this game, it's a game inspired by the old adventure board game Hero Quest, hence the quest in the title. If you're not familiar with Hero Quest, though, this is still a fun game. You can think of it as a turn-based, party-based, grid-based, isometric RPG. It's a lot of fun. It's deceptively difficult. I've actually tried making this video series 3 times. Well, this is the 3rd time. Screwing up really badly the first couple of times, and I had to try a couple of times on my own beforehand. It's a deceptively challenging game. I really like it. It's like a beefed up version of Hero Quest, which was rather simple, and I highly recommend it. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer as we begin our profile here. Papa Boris. I did get a free copy of this game. I love this game. I am saying that not because I got the copy for free, but because this game is awesome. I occasionally do get offers to play games by email, and I feel like a terrible person, but I ignore most of them because my limiting factor right now, as the owner of a 0-year-old baby, is time, not money. But this game, as soon as it got into my inbox and it was like, here's a game that's kind of like Hero Quest, I was like, sold! Please send me the key, I beg you. And here I am giving some rave reviews. Now, I also have some suggestions for improvement in this game, and I'll be honest where I think this game has shortcomings, but overall, I love the game. I highly recommend it. Okay, so this game takes place across a series of dungeons. Each dungeon consists of a series of rooms. There's no wandering the hallways in this game. You go from room to room via these exits. Right now we just have one character, the Barbarian, but we will get more. Let's take a quick look at the stats of the Barbarian, so you can see by right-clicking on a character what various statistics for that character are. When you're not in combat, you can move around as much as you like. It's only when we have enemies in a room that we start to go into turn-based combat mode. Here, notice the perception stat, 40%. That means that when the Barbarian loots a corpse or breaks a barrel, there's only a 40% chance of finding treasure. We didn't succeed that time, not a surprise. Okay, so here we have combat. Now let's talk a little bit about how combat works in this game. It's a bit unusual. So right-clicking again on the Barbarian, now you'll notice he has an attack of 3. What that means is that when the Barbarian makes an attack, you can kind of think of it as if he's rolling 3 dice. And an accuracy of 60% means that each die has a 60% chance of rolling a hit. So if you imagine the Barbarian rolling a 10-sided die, or a D10 if you've got the nerd cred, it's kind of like this attack 3 accuracy 60% means that he's rolling 3 of these 10-sided dice, and each of these dice has 6 sides that are a hit for 1 damage and 4 sides that are a miss. So attacking in this game is modular, meaning it's not all or nothing like it is in D&D. You can do 0, 1, 2, or 3 damage when you have an attack of 3. Type physical means that it's like a martial attack. We'll talk about magical attacks later. Range 1 means the Barbarian has to be next to the enemy, and in this game, being diagonal does not count as being next to, so the Barbarian must be orthogonally adjacent to an enemy to attack it. Movement of 5 means the Barbarian can move 5 squares. Now I'm just going to get right to it. This is my one main criticism of the game. You'll notice that I can actually attack this Goblin Warrior by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares and attacking him. If I click on this Goblin Warrior, you'll see that the game is telling me that the Barbarian's going to walk this way, and if I click on the Warrior again, the Barbarian's going to walk up and attack him. But if I click on the square next to the Goblin Warrior, watch what happens. The Barbarian moves 5 squares and his turn ends. In this game, a character that moves 5 squares, or not 5 squares, sorry, a character that moves his maximum speed ends his turn, which I think is bizarre, and I think the reason it was implemented this way is as like a time saver. That way you don't have to like hit the end of turn button after every turn. The game automatically ends turns for you, and the trigger for knowing that a party member is out is to just automatically make them be out when they've moved their maximum movement speed or when they've attacked. We'll see throughout this run why that is a little bit too much of a shortcut and robs the player of some strategic flexibility. So I can move 4 squares, for example, and my turn keeps going. And now I'm going to go ahead and attack this guy. Now let's talk a little bit about blocking. So this Goblin Warrior has a defense of 20%, meaning that there's a 20% chance of completely blocking any physical attack. So whereas attacking in this game is not all or nothing, it is modular. Like I said, the Barbarian can do 1, 2, 3, or 0 damage with an attack. Defense is all or nothing. So when the 20% stat of defense is here, it means the Goblin has a 20% chance of blocking all the damage, and if this 20% roll fails, then he takes all of the damage. So I rolled 2 hits on my 3 attack dice, and the goblin failed its 20% chance of defense, so he died. And it's time to move on. This is just a little bit of flavor here. The game, you know, I'd call the overall look of this game rustic. You know, like in those cooking shows, if you watch like MasterChef or Top Chef, where the contestants are all supposed to make like really, really fancy looking dishes, and they're supposed to look pretty as well as tasting good. Anytime someone churns out one that's like super basic looking, they use a euphemism, they call it rustic, to like, you know, say that it was intentional, that it looks like it just came out of like some random person's oven. So this game has a very rustic look with like, you know, the writing, and the certain aspects of the interface, but I love it. It's part of the charm for me. You know, it's your mileage may vary. Anyway, here we have a Skull of Fate. When you click on this thing, it does one of 5 things. It either kills an enemy, deals 1 to 2 damage to an enemy, heals you for a bit, or gives you some gold, or does nothing. So if I were to twist this thing, it would have a 40% chance of attacking or killing this warrior. Now, I think I actually have a higher chance of just attacking it, so this might not have been the best tutorial for the Skull of Fate. Ooh, see how that was a block animation rather than a miss? That means that my barbarian rolled the 40% chance of defense. And now the goblin got its 20% chance of defense, and see, that was a miss. That's different. So miss means the goblin failed its attack roll. The animation with the defense and the clinging of swords, that means that there was an actual defense. Oh my god, that sword went right through the guy's head. I'm still gonna do this just in case some gold drops. Hey, look at that, some gold drops. Nice. You can click on this map here and try to guess sometimes where the end of the dungeon is likely to be. Like this room that's really big seems like it's more likely to be more after that. So let's go here, and yep, that's a dead end. So now we can comfortably go here. Okay, so here we're going to talk about abilities. Abilities are things you can do as a free action, but they are limited usually to being just once per dungeon. So I can throw an axe 1 time per dungeon. It does not cost an action, so I can still attack. There are, however, some issues with order. So if you attack and do a regular attack, then you can no longer do abilities. But if you do an ability, then you can still attack. Remember also that if your character moves his maximum movement speed, then his turn is over. Unless there are other characters who have not finished their turns yet, in which case you can click on the character whose turn has ended, and then you can use abilities, but not attacks. It's kind of weird. I wish you could just move your damn full movement speed in this game. So anyway, just to illustrate here, we're gonna go 3 squares, and since it's not my maximum movement speed, I can still keep doing stuff. Then we're gonna do a throwing axe on this guy. The range, I think, on this throwing axe is infinite. Let's talk a little bit, by the way, about how you interpret these menus. So down where it says ability parentheses 1/3, it means that this ability is at level 1 of 3. Each ability can have up to 3 levels put into it. The barbarian starts with just 1 level of throwing axe. Then the body of this window tells you what the ability does at each level. It's kind of bizarre because you can only upgrade abilities in town, so I'm not sure why you would need to see at all times what the upgrade path for every single ability is, but you can. So you can see here that at level 1, this throwing axe will deal 1 to 2 points of damage to an enemy. Since this warlock has only 1 hit point, I'm guaranteed to kill him with this throwing axe. These abilities cannot miss, and they cannot be defended by a character's defense stat, even when, like a throwing axe, they would seem to be physical. If you level this up to 2, you will deal 2 to 3 points of damage, and if you level it up to 3, you can use this ability twice per dungeon rather than 1. So in general, abilities can only be used once per dungeon, but some of them can be upgraded to be usable more than once. Now, since I've used my ability first, I can actually still do my basic attack, and look at that. On a rampage this time. Okay, now let's talk about these magic pots. Magic pots are used outside of dungeons in the village to upgrade your characters. And I'm not gonna, I can't show you the whole thing until we get to town, but just, you can imagine, if you put a magic pot into throwing axe, then it will become level 2 instead of level 1, and it will start dealing 2 to 3 points of damage instead of 1 to 2. Now, as far as I know, there's no way to respec your characters, so you have to be a little bit careful. There are more characters that you can recruit than that you can bring into battle at any given time, or at least eventually that becomes the case. So you want to make sure that you don't spend any pots on characters that you don't actually want to play with. For example, if you don't want to play with the barbarian long term, then you want to make sure that you don't actually spend any pots upgrading his abilities. Alright, I had a 40% chance of finding treasure in those barrels, in each one. None of them worked. I have actually had it where I find treasure in 1 or 2 of them, so it truly is random. Okay, so we got 2 enemies here, but I can't use my axe anymore because I've already used it. So what I'm going to do is play strategically. This Goblin Warlock has a defense of none, so I'm guaranteed to land an attack on him, assuming that all 3 of my dice don't roll a miss, which is very unlikely. And indeed, got a couple hits, so he died. Now this guy's gonna attack me, I defend. 1. He gets me for 1, and I get him for 1, and then there's another pot. Now, earlier it said 2/2. So how come there's a 3rd pot? Well, there's a bonus pot for killing all the monsters in a dungeon. When you kill the last monster in a dungeon, he drops a pot. So it's really important to note that that goblin wasn't like scripted to drop a pot. That wasn't a pot dropping goblin. Whoever I killed last in this dungeon was going to drop a pot. This encourages you to explore every map to the fullest, because if you do explore all the rooms, not only might you find all the pots that are to be found in all the rooms, but as long as you get the last monster in the dungeon killed, you'll find a pot. And it's kind of a nice feature because when a monster drops a pot, it means that you have killed all the monsters in that dungeon. There might still be more to explore and more gold to find and so on, but at least all the monsters are dead. Okay, so now let's take a look at the village. I'm not going to play any more missions in this video, so if you want to see actual gameplay, that first mission was basically just a tutorial. Definitely stick around, but for now, let's just talk a little bit about some of the things you can do in this village. So the alchemist sells potions. The barbarian starts with 2, I can't show you them unless I go to the, fine, I'll go to the alchemist. The barbarian starts with 2 healing potions, which are pretty crappy, you can see here. They mostly heal 2 hit points, but occasionally they heal just 1 or 3. And you can use 1 potion per turn. I'm not going to buy any more at this time because my inventory is full. The Elder is where you go to select your next quest. Now, the 2 most important ones that we have unlocked right now, there's some others that we have not unlocked, are the Tavern and the Magician. At the Tavern, you can do 2 things. You can rest, which costs 50 gold per character, and it heals them to full. The Barbarian's at 6 of 7 life, but what I find is that I guess it's a tutorial thing. At the start of the next mission, he will be healed up to 7. So I'm not going to rest him now for 50 gold, but in future missions we'll be resting between each mission. I highly recommend doing it. Even though 50 gold per head is like a lot, it's still worth it because it's better to spend that gold than to fail a mission. I mean, I guess you could argue that failing missions isn't the end of the world, but it's just better to spend the gold, or at least I prefer to spend the gold, just to make sure that my characters are in tip-top shape every time they go into a fight. Now, we can also recruit new heroes here. There are 6 heroes in the game. You start with the Barbarian. The Dwarf is grayed out because we got to find him in a dungeon. It says here, unlocked through a quest. And there's 4 others. Now, my favorite is the Wizard, so let's go ahead and grab him, although the others are all great. And now, notice we need to complete 4 more quests to unlock another hero. So what I'm going to do here is head over to the Magician and upgrade some skills. I am not going to play with the Barbarian long term. I don't want to be clear about this. I don't think the Barbarian's a bad character. The Barbarian's got some good skills. So the Barbarian's not bad. I just personally prefer a different playstyle. A lot of the Barbarian stuff is like static effects that just help him do better at walking up to enemies and killing them. Like, for example, double attack makes him do 2 attacks instead of 1 every so often. Rage gives him more attack when he's at low health. This gives him a chance to counterattack when things attack him. This ups attack for a room. This is actually kind of a cool ability, but it's one of his few abilities. So most of the Barbarian's stuff is either a skill, meaning it's a persistent effect, or something that's not limited to being once per dungeon, whereas abilities like the Axe Throw can only be used once per dungeon unless specified otherwise. So the Barbarian doesn't have a lot of abilities. I prefer to play with abilities. I prefer to have like things that I can do only a limited number of times per dungeon, but which are very powerful. If you are going to play with a Barbarian, you really can't go wrong just upgrading this axe, because a lot of the standard enemies have 2 hit points, so if you just get this up to level 2, then you get 1 guaranteed kill as a free action per dungeon, and you can get this up to level 3 and then have that twice per dungeon, which can make a nice little difference in difficult combats. However, I'm going to upgrade... By the way, you don't need to actually leave the Magician interface and come back. You can switch while you're here. I'm going to upgrade the Wizard's starting stuff. Now, almost everything that the Wizard has is actually an ability. So if you learn a lot of these things, you can do a lot of stuff. Now, my preferred way to play with the Wizard is to spread his pots around. For example, you could spend your starting pots to upgrade Lightning Storm all the way, making this incredibly powerful. It strikes up to 3 random enemies in the room and deals 3 to 5, 2 to 3, and 1 to 2 magic damage to them. It's kind of nuts. But I'm just going to leave this at level 1, where it starts, which means that it deals 3 to 5 damage to 1 random enemy, making it a pretty good boss killer if there's only 1 boss in the room and you just want to do a bunch of damage to him. I want to spread out my pots initially just so I have a lot of different abilities to do. Basically, I'd rather be able to do, let's say, 2 or 3 powerful things in a dungeon, rather than just one very powerful thing. Now, in my opinion, the most pound per pound efficient skill the wizard has is Tornado. For just a single pot, you get an ability that does 2 damage in a straight line. And that's important that it does 2 damage at level 1 because it means that it kills most monsters, and if they happen to be standing in a straight line, you kill 2 of them as a free action, so it's pretty dope. I'm also gonna go ahead and grab the, I'm always torn between Inferno. You know what, the hell with it, let's just get them both. Let's get them both. We get Inferno, so this deals 2 damage to a target and 1 to creatures around it. You can upgrade that at level 2, which is where I'm going to go eventually. 4 damage to a target and then 2 to any adjacent creature. So the 1 damage to adjacent creatures is not likely to kill a lot of things, but this just gives you a free kill anywhere on the map, so it's pretty strong. And the illusions are pretty sweet. So this creates X illusions of the wizard, where X is the number of pots you've invested in this skill, or sorry, I should call it ability. And the illusions can move around and attack just like the wizard, and they can also take hits. So it's a very useful thing to do at the beginning of a fight if you know it's going to be just a tough fight in general and you can't like immediately wipe out the enemies with your other stuff. Okay, that's all I'm going to do here. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon for some more Dark Quest 2. Take care.